Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kelly Paletta, Director of Sales and Marketing at eXp Technical. Welcome to our webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about cybercrime in 2026. We have a great presentation prepared for you. For those of you that aren't familiar with me or with eXp Technical, we provide IT support to hundreds of small and medium-sized businesses all across Western Washington, primarily here in the Puget Sound region. We support a large number of architectural, engineering, and construction firms, as well as law offices, accounting and financial services providers, manufacturing, nonprofit orgs, and many industries I'm sure I'm neglecting to mention. But today's presentation is not a sales pitch and it's not a product demo. It's entirely educational. And in fact, that's what motivates this series. What we try to do, or our goal here, is to um, curate a list of guest speakers that have unique perspectives and valuable insights. And we give them an audience of business leaders here in Western Washington and put those two together with the hopes that it will make our region more secure, more operationally efficient. Just a couple of announcements before I introduce our guest speaker today. One is we are recording this session and the presentation materials will be available to you. Now, I hope that you can be a little bit patient. It takes me about a week to prepare that, but be on the lookout for email from me about a week down the road that will give you access to a replay of the video and the presentation materials as well. Another important housekeeping item or thing that you might want to be aware of is that we are allowing for time at the end of this session for questions and answers. And so you're welcome to submit your questions. We want it to be a little bit interactive. There is some prepared material, but if you have questions, you could submit them via the chat or via the Q&A feature if it's enabled on your Zoom interface. The difference is questions that are posed to the chat are visible to everyone, so just be aware of that, whereas the Q&A questions will go directly to me as the moderator. I'll do my best to batch those up and address them as we get to the end of the session here. But feel free to submit your questions as they come up. And then, we'll kind of dive into the overview here or why we're doing this. Cybercrime and the cyber threat landscape is continually changing. And so that's why we do this sort of presentation regularly. What we find is that there are small gaps that enable the bad guys in. And it might be in terms of configuration or human behaviors or whatever the case may be, but the landscape is always changing. And one of the things that we feel is really valuable about this presentation today and our guest speaker today is that it's not an IT support provider presenting their theoretical understanding of cybercrime. We're bringing in a guest that has a law enforcement perspective to talk about, he'll talk about the cases that he works, what he sees, hopefully some information about what you can do to protect yourself and your business and your personal operations or your personal cybersecurity as well. So we'll walk through how modern attacks unfold, what happens in the aftermath, and what you can do to protect yourself as well. And that's probably a good time for me to introduce our guest speaker because I'm sure he's got lots of great information for you. So our guest today is Neil Uhrig. He is a cybersecurity forensic analyst with the United States Secret Service. He works the cases, does the investigations, and as we were talking before, is an expert to others in the region on in he was telling me he serves as a consultant to, he's traveled the world as an expert on cybercrime. We'll just say that. So, Neil, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much for hosting this. I think we'll have a good time in the next hour or so. So I've got a slide deck that we're going to go through. I go pretty quick, and so if there are questions, throw them in the chat, and as you think of them, and that way, when we get to the end, we'll just start knocking them out. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my PowerPoint. So we should have that going now. So
Yes.
a little bit about me and my history. So I've been with the Secret Service for a little over 2.5 years now. Before I joined the Secret Service, I worked for the Post Falls Police Department in Idaho as a detective. I served 18 years in that position and took on different roles. I mean, at one point, I drove a patrol car, and then over time, got involved in actual investigations as a detective and a supervisor. My focus in the last probably 7 years of my career was digital forensics and child exploitation. So done a lot of investigations on child pornography. I still live in Post Falls, wife and kids there. They live there as well. And then I volunteer my time as the chair of our school board in Post Falls. And so you see that picture, that's me and my dog and my motorcycle. That's what I like to do in the summertime. So let's get going real quick. Just want to tell you about the Secret Service, how we got involved in this, because obviously most people think, protecting the president, that's only a component of what we do. Abraham Lincoln created us, the Secret Service, 160 years ago. The act that he established the Secret Service as his last act before he was shot. It was on the same night he was murdered. He created the Secret Service. And the reason is that we needed to establish law enforcement to go after counterfeiters. And we continued doing that type of work and picked up more duties throughout the late 1800s. We were doing investigations involving distilleries. We were doing Ku Klux Klan investigations. Pretty much if there was a federal crime, we were it because there was no FBI. We started getting involved in protection after President McKinley was assassinated. And so 1902, we started doing that full time. 1908, we started protecting also, I think, the vice president at that point. And so as time progressed, we narrowed our focus to two specific areas: investigations involving the financial system and the internet, and protection. And so that all started in 1984 when Congress wrote a new law that is Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. So the way we address cybercrime is through partnership. We establish cyber fraud task forces across actually the world. We have a few of them overseas in Europe as well. And we team up with state and local partners, federal agencies, and also academics and private sector. And these task forces go after those that are trying to rip people off on the internet or hack businesses. And so our region, so for the Pacific Northwest, and that includes Alaska, Washington, Idaho, Oregon, Montana, we're covered by the Seattle Cyber Fraud Task Force. We're a tight-knit group. If you saw on the past slide there, we're the only task force in this area. So we're a tight-knit group, do a lot of good work. So our dual mission that we do, obviously the protection, and then on the right-hand side are the areas we investigate. And we're going to spend most of our time today talking about electronic crimes because that's what I do. So here I'm in my office in Spokane. This is if you saw my video feed before I went to my slide, that I'm actually in my forensics lab. Our capabilities, we do a lot of different types of work here: computer examinations, cell phone examinations, cell phone records analysis. And so what that means is if there's a crime that's been committed, I'm going to pull your phone records from your carrier and plot out on a map where you've been. So basically I can put you at a scene of a crime, or if you're innocent, I'll be able to show you weren't there. So that's the type of work we do there. We do video enhancement and analysis. So if we've got CCTV footage of some sort of crime, we can enhance the video. We can often get license plates through that method. And then finally, I do network intrusions. And what that involves is going after bad actors, most of the time from overseas, that hack businesses and private individuals. And those are the most challenging work that we do. I do want to make a small plug about how the Secret Service supports our state and local partners. We run the National Computer Forensics Institute. It's the nation's only law enforcement program that's completely free, where we have 28 different programs where law enforcement can go down there for completely nothing. It's just their agency has to pay their wages, and they can learn how to do the work that I do. And so what's nice too is that when you go down to our facility at NCFI, we give you the equipment as well. So our bread and butter class is called B-Cert. That is our forensic school. It's 5 weeks in residence. And when a student leaves there, they leave with $35,000 of equipment paid for by Congress. So it's a great way for us to prepare our local partners so they can take on some of these investigations. And then the other thing that I do beyond this type of lectures, I do internet safety for K-12 education and also for parents. And so that's in partnership with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So we're going to go right into one of the big areas that we're targeting right now as a service, and it's skimming. So skimming is the focus is getting the track information off of your credit debit card or SNAP benefit card. And I'll talk more about SNAP in a minute. But basically, in the magnetic strip, there is your card number. You also have your PIN number. You'll also have your CVV, or the little 3-digit code. And so skimmers are trying to steal that data. Now, what's good to know is that it's extremely hard to skim off of the chip on your card. That chip has a rolling code technology, meaning if they grab the information's right, but because it doesn't have that rolling code, they just can't use it. It's the strip that they're stealing. Tap to pay also, they have not circumvented that and figured out how to skim that. So they're targeting still the swipes. Now, there's a form with an ATM on the chip, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. But how bad is it getting? It's since 2022, we've seen a 500% increase in skimming. The losses just in 2021 were $21 billion. And so, and what we're finding is this is all being done by foreign actors that send people into the United States to do skimming operations. I'm going to show you a quick video. There's no audio on this, but this is how they do an install. This is a case that I worked back in 2023. You will be able to see here where the guy with the pizza box, just watch his, oops, let's go back one. Sorry about that, folks, because you want to see this. Just kind of watch what he does. So I think you can see from that video how quickly he installed this overlay. We call it an overlay skimmer. It's designed to grab the credit card magnet, and it's also designed to get the PIN numbers. And so that's the device that was actually installed on that terminal. Doesn't take much to install it. Many of these are now Bluetooth. So what actually happens is they can sit outside a location and download all the data. They don't even have to come back in. There's a battery component, and so that's the only thing that makes it so sometimes they have to return in there. But because it's just dealing with small amounts of data, batteries last a long time. Here's another type of skimmer. So we're talking even smaller. This is one that we took off of a terminal. I think this was in Seattle where I got this one. And this is the back side. So on the back, you can see, I mean, the front looked very professional, but on the back side, you can see hot glue and wires. So this is the meat and potatoes of how it actually functions back here. Here's another one. This is one that I personally found in, this was in Brooklyn about 6 months ago. You look here, it looks normal. That was on top of it. And so what they're doing there is they're actually stealing electronic benefits cards, SNAP cards. So they're stealing food stamps. And the reason they're doing that is for some reason our government still has not made the cards have chips in them. So SNAP benefit cards still have the magnetic swipe. So that's why now they're targeting that, because they can actually still get that. I'm hopeful that someday we will switch from that, but we'll see. Now, I mentioned ATMs and how they are being attacked right now. ATMs, they actually depend on your chip, and they have the magnetic swipe as well. At an ATM, they will put this little sheet of metal within the actual track of the ATM. You can't even see it. For us to notice it, we have to have a technician come out and help us gain access. So it slides in there and it'll grab the information when your card goes into the card track of the ATM. There is always going to be a pinhole camera to capture the PIN number, though. So that's how we know that we're going to find a skimmer inside, is we will find that pinhole camera somewhere on the ATM pointed at where people's hands will be entering the PIN code. All the more reason when you're entering a PIN code, cover it with your hand. Now, the Secret Service is attacking this heavily. We are doing a national initiative called the Orion Initiative. We're going into communities around the United States, inspecting businesses everywhere we go looking for skimmers. And we've been very successful. Over the past 2 years, we've recovered 523 skimmers across the United States. And the value we have determined is about $544 million that was not lost because we intercepted those skimmers. Skimmers can steal, they say, somewhere around $300,000 per install. So it's pretty significant. And so we're doing this constantly. New York has been the hotbed. The last one we picked up 65 skimmers out of the city of New York, but we just did one over in Seattle a month ago, and we got 14 in the Seattle area in a 2-day operation. There's another type of skimming, though, that is applicable not just to point of sale, but anyone that has a website that has e-commerce. If you're accepting credit cards, you're vulnerable to this, and it's called e-skimming form jacking. What they're going to do is insert a line of code into your web interface, how you accept credit cards. The code is usually obfuscated. And in this case, I know this code is a lot to try to look at, but in that red block is an encoding called base 64. We don't know what it means, but computers do. And in this specific case, that simple line was all it needs to know to send the credit card information to a credit or to a command and control server over the internet. So it's really easy on a website where you're talking thousands of lines of code. If they can gain access to this, they can insert this, and now you're vulnerable. Now, the Secret Service identifies this happening for businesses. We have relationships with banks. They're able to tell us when they think that an e-skimming may be happening with a particular vendor. And then we will make contact, or I'll go on their website and find the code myself, and then we'll stop it. But this is very prominent right now. What they're doing with that information typically is they sell it on the dark web. They'll have these forums, they call them Carter forums, and they sell the stolen data. So the one that you see here is from the Biden Cash forum. I shared this one because I was involved in this case. I spent a month in Germany last January working on the servers from Biden Cash. And so this was an organization that would buy these stolen credit cards from e-skimming and post them online, and you can buy them from there. So that's how they would actually make money off of it. They get the card number, they put it in a form, and they sell it, and then somebody else will use it. And that's kind of the life cycle of a stolen credit card. You can see here what it looks like on the inside. You can pick where you want them, how many cards you want. You get a discount if you buy in bulk. So I guess you could say it's kind of like Costco. So that's our e-skimming problem. The next issue that we deal a ton with is phishing. And I think we've all know exactly what that means, but let's talk about what actually is now occurring and how they're monetizing it. We often see a man-in-the-middle attack. So what they're trying to do is get between you and the server. They're trying to get information from your bosses. So they're injecting themselves into your day-to-day operation. It's called spear phishing because it's targeted. Just normal phishing is blanketed. They just send it to everybody. Spear phishing involves research and premeditation. The suspect knows who they want to target. They do research online. They look at LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a huge security thing. If you are a person with full credentials in your business and you can gain access to everything, I highly recommend taking your LinkedIn down because they're looking for people on LinkedIn that would have full access to or what we call the keys to the kingdom, that can gain access to everything. So spear phishing involves emails. They want to entice you to click links. And the goal is to either hand over credentials or, as we'll talk about in a minute, they'll do some wire fraud, which I'll explain in a moment. So because it involves research, they're going to know everything about you. They will probably know your bank account because it's not that hard to figure out who you bank with. They're going to know your full name and address. They're going to personalize it. And because of AI, these emails now are getting even better. It used to be that you could tell really easily because grammar was off, because a lot of these actors are coming from overseas. English is not their first language. AI is now cleaning a lot of that up. So you really got to be on your game to catch it. Sometimes they do a double barrel technique. And what they're doing is they're letting you know earlier in the day, hey, I'm about to jump on a plane. I'm going to email you when I get to my airport with some instructions. And in your mind, you're like, well, I remember my boss did tell me that I was going to do this. So it seemed normal when you got that follow up email. And then we have our business email compromise. This is the wire fraud component. And this is something that the Secret Service is heavily involved in. The focus here is to get your business to change the wire or ACH information for one of your vendors. So they will then try to get you to wire. And I think it'll be easier to see here. So you'll see here this message saying that I need you to process a wire for me today. So that's the double barrel process. They haven't done it yet, but they're going to follow up. Now, where is this coming out of? It's almost exclusively overseas. This is a picture out of Nigeria. They have all these calls, internet cafes, but really what happens in there is 24/7. You have people in there committing these crimes. And so we know that, I mean, these shacks that you see in this picture are 24/7 open, and they're always packed out with people doing this. So there's a couple different ones, but the big one it involves account compromise and CEO fraud. They're trying to get to somebody that can do large scale wires. Part of this does require credential harvesting to be effective, because what they want to do is get into your email box and set up a few rules to hide what they're doing. One of them would be to delete any incoming emails. So that way you don't see it. So, but they'll first do a forward to their account. So they see it and you don't. So you don't see what's going on. So they will, the most effective types of these scams involve access through your email portal. And that's when you'll see these phishing emails where they want you to click on here and it looks legitimate, this OneDrive prompt here. It's going to steal your credentials. When we investigate this, there's a couple things I'm going to want. I want the full email, including the headers. Now, the headers, it's there, and I'll show you what it looks like here in a minute. You see that arrow there? That is a header. Now, it looks like a bunch of mess, but what that tells us is every hop that email went through, so I can trace it back. And so if you become a victim to this, I will help whoever I'm talking to find this information, because each email service is different. Outlook does it differently than Gmail, but they all have a version of this, and I can figure out at least where they're coming from and then maybe go after the criminal for it. But it is tough because they're overseas. So just an example of how this goes down. This is a legitimate email that we have our bad actor is already in the email box, and it sees this message. The following payment will be sent to you. So this is notifying the vendor money's coming. And they say, oh, thank you. Have a nice weekend. The person monitoring the account sees this and they kick off this email saying that our bank just informed us that our account has been placed on hold and we need to set up a new bank information. And so the victim company sends the updated form. Here's the form. They fill it out. They're changing the information. You can see here, this is what was submitted. So now we have a bank account. I do kind of laugh about this because the check that they attached is a counter check that doesn't even have the payer's information on it. That should be a red flag, but that didn't get caught in this situation. Now, you may wonder, how is that money going from Bank of America to Nigeria or Korea or wherever this is happening? It's a process called money mules. So they will be scamming someone in the United States with some sort of work at home scam, or sometimes it's a romance scam. And they were told, hey, your job in the US is to send money for us back out of the country, and you get paid a certain commission on that. And they think it's either a legitimate job, which it's not, or if it's a romance thing, they play on the heartstrings. Oh, I've got this money. Can you send it to me? And so that's how actually they use a US bank, and then it'll move outside the country from there. So then the person that was supposed to get paid saying, "Hey, I didn't get my $75,000. Where's my money?" And that's when things get real. And so the victim company says, "Hey, you sent me this change." And they're like, "Oh, look here. This is not, I did not do this. This was not us." And so now the victim business has a vendor that needs paid, but they didn't get their money. So that's how it's happening. So the big thing about this is, as soon as you realize this has happened, you need to get a hold of law enforcement. We do have methods sometimes to reverse a wire. It's not 100%. If it's a foreign wire, it's typically 72 hours. I can sometimes recover. Domestic wires, there's not a time frame. It's through liaison with different banks. So if I work with different banks to get the information or get the money back, sometimes I'm successful. But oftentimes, if we don't know about it within a few days, your money's gone. So I mentioned that because of AI, a lot of these errors now in these emails have gone away, but still worth looking. If you notice these things, be cautious. You're probably dealing with someone that's trying to phish you. So how do we prevent this? So in the Secret Service, we have these phishing campaigns that are come out from our headquarters to make sure that no one clicks the links. And if you click a link, they make you take an 8-hour class. So it's been pretty effective to get people not to click links. That's what we want. But the big things are, don't download strange attachments. Keep your software frequently updated. If you're not updating your software and you get hacked, the liability is on you at that point, because like Windows and say, "Hey, we pushed this out, we fixed this." It's on you for not updating your system. Keep your emotions in check. Typically, with any sort of email scam, they're going to have a sense of urgency with it. They're going to want it done right away. That's not normal. Nothing in business, unless you're like a first responder, really needs to be done immediately, but they make it seem that way. And then finally, always verify these things. If there's money involved, move away from your email account and talk to the person you're supposed to be communicating with in a different method. And that's how you protect yourself. The next area that I deal with is ransomware. Now, ransomware, I'm intimately involved with it because we're going to walk through a case study here in a few minutes on a case that I worked. But what you're seeing here is, when I was in training at our network intrusion school, I accidentally launched ransomware on my computer. I double clicked something I wasn't supposed to, and this is what happened. And so you will see, and it's kind of blurry, but everything is in Russian at the top and then English at the bottom. And every file on there has been encrypted. And that's how this usually presents. Now, thankfully, I was in what we call a sandbox. I'm using a MacBook Pro, and I'm running a virtual machine of Windows on my MacBook. And so what that does is, because I did this, all I have to do is delete that virtual machine. And if you haven't heard what a virtual machine is, it's a computer within a computer. And so basically, I can log into my computer, open up an application like VirtualBox or Virtualware, and then I can launch a whole nother computer using a different operating system. In my line of work, we do that a lot because it protects my system. I put it on my MacBook because I know that Windows ransomware is not going to cross over to Mac. They don't communicate that way. It's different systems. So that's why I do it that way. Now, a lot of people think Macs aren't subject to this type of attack. They absolutely are. The issue is that most hackers are not spending time writing code for Macs because it's not the majority, it's not being used in the majority of businesses. They're going to go at the vast majority, which is Windows and Linux. And Linux is being used on servers. So that's why Macs are safer. It's not because they're inherently safer. It's that the bad guys aren't wasting their time because there's more money elsewhere. So with ransomware, it's going to leave a ransom note in some way on the machine. You'll see right here how they want me to communicate. This is through his Gmail, but there's a lot of different ways that they're doing it now. And they're typically going to want money. And money is done usually in some sort of crypto. whether that be Bitcoin, or we've seen Bitcoin now being converted into Tether. Tether is a type of cryptocurrency that is pegged to the US dollar. And so we'll see the money get moved through various different crypto exchanges. The Secret Service has a capability to investigate that. So we are able to trace cryptocurrency across what they call the blockchain. And the blockchain is, think of a ledger like your checkbook. It follows wherever the money goes. And depending on where it ends up, we have been successful at recovering stolen money that is converted into crypto. It's really hard though, because most of this is overseas. I've got one crypto exchange that I'm working with right now. I've been working with 6 months, just waiting for them to give the money back to my victim. So when we're dealing with someone overseas, we're going off of the good graces of these businesses to give the money back. Even if I have a court order saying to do it, they're not in America. They know that there's little that we'll do about it. So a lot of people ask me, what are the main things to look for ransomware? That's really tough because there's so many different variants and they do different things. So instead of telling you different things you'll see, I'm going to tell you what they always do. And by knowing what they do, you'll be able to spot it. Ransomware is going to always attempt to install itself or try to entice you to click a button. It's got to deploy. If it doesn't deploy, it's not worth it. I mean, that's the whole goal here. It's going to try to run and hide throughout your entire system or network. We call that lateral movement. It's going to get typically on someone's endpoint computer, maybe a laptop. They're like, okay, this laptop doesn't have what I need. They're going to find a way to get to servers. That's what they want to do, and get to as many of them as they can. Then they're going to want to persist in the environment. So if you could just reboot your computer and it goes away, that's game over for them. So they actually write it into the computer registry that every time you restart your computer, it's going to re-encrypt if for some reason it failed. So, which it typically doesn't anyhow, but they're going to make it persist. You can't just make it go away. And then finally, they're going to try to either modify your data, that's encryption, so you can't actually use your stuff. And now we're seeing a ton of this. They're going to exfiltrate or steal your data and hold it for ransom. So ransomware has been around a long time, but it really took off once cryptocurrency became a thing, because now it made a way for money to be moved across the seas easily. So, right around 2009 is when we saw it really kick off. We are seeing ransomware being used as a form of state warcraft. What I mean by that is Russia is very well known for using ransomware to attack Ukraine. There's specific ransomware you'll see on here, NotPetya. So that came out of Russia, and they were using NotPetya to attack the banking system of Ukraine. So when you're dealing with national bad actors that work for the government, their ransomware is spot on, and it's very hard to deal with. WannaCry is another one that was done by North Korea. And so we're seeing all of this happen as a way of attacking countries. And it's highly effective. If you can take down a country's banking system, there's no reason to launch bombs into that country. They can't do anything without money. So very effective in that type of warcraft. So how bad is this problem? It's extremely, extremely bad right now. What we do find is that about 57% of businesses are able to recover from this using backups. You should be backing up your data, but what often happens is the ransomware hits the backup. To have an effective backup system, it needs to be write once, read many. What that means is that it writes to your backup server. It doesn't write again. You can look at it, but you can't change it. That's a proper way to do that. A lot of people don't have their servers, their backup servers set up like that. So that's the best way. Second is to have an off-site backup. something that is not on the internet. You only connect it when you need to run the backup. And so the problem with that is that it's not going to back up every day. You've got to have some sort of schedule. But hey, if you back it up once a week, you get hit, you only have to roll back 1 week. Well, yeah, you're gonna have to figure to reproduce what you did one in that past week. But other than that, you've got everything back up and running. It's well worth it. The average ransom cost, it keeps going up. It's in the millions. And so you can see here 1.3 million is the average ask, but it's going to be based off of the nature of your business. These hackers know who you are. They put the groundwork in. They're going to know your budget. In fact, I've seen it where they steal a copy of a business budget when they hack you, so they know exactly how much money to ask for. I have seen it where they steal a copy of your cyber insurance policy to know what the financial cap is. So they will ask for a ransom at the top of the cap. So they put a lot of research in this stuff. It used to be that ransomware would not attack essential services like hospitals or education or law enforcement agencies. That shifted. They're attacking everyone. Every type of business is vulnerable. Everything from your Fortune 500 all the way down to small mom and pops and nonprofits. Now, I mentioned that they're stealing your data. And so they'll encrypt your data on your computer so you can't use it. And then they're going to exfiltrate it. And then they're going to put it on a website that they run on the dark web. We call it a shaming site. Every hack that they do, they will have a countdown on there saying, I hacked this business. I've given them 7 days to pay me. If they don't pay me, I open up the download link and people can download the entire contents of the exfiltrated data. And we monitor those every day. We at our headquarters, I get an email bulletin of businesses that are on these shaming blogs. And then I contact the business to offer assistance and say, hey, you're on this blog here. What happened to you? Let's see if we can help you. Now, ransomware is actually a business model. It's a ransomware as a service. Think of a franchise model like McDonald's. You've got your software developer, that's who wrote the ransomware, that's the head of it. He franchises out his software to other hackers, and they actually do the work. And so the franchisees take a certain amount of the money if there's a ransom paid, and they pay a franchise fee back to the developer. So it's just like McDonald's, how they would function. They're doing the exact same thing. Sometimes they'll have a monthly flat fee. It just depends on which ransomware variant. But the most common one is the ransomware as a service model with a franchise fee. The goal here to get you to pay is through that encryption, through exfiltration, and then shaming you on the web. Those are their three, is a three-legged stool. They're going to do these things. So it makes it so uncomfortable for you that you don't have a choice, that you cannot function without your data and you're going to pay. So when you get hacked and you get ransomware, a lot of these franchisees run a website specific to your attack. They're going to give you a web address to go to, and it's been designed to your business. So it's very professional. This is what one of them looks like. Your files have been encrypted. There's a note that was left on the computer that actually says how to get to that website. What's neat about it, though, or maybe not neat, but professional. So on the left-hand side of the site, you can actually trial decrypt. You can upload a file to prove that they can decrypt your stuff. So that way you don't just pay them money until they prove it. And on the right is their chat with support. This is 24/7. And I know that it's 24/7 because I've communicated with them day and night on these things. And there's always someone on the other end ready to help you, quote unquote, through the attack. And once you pay them, their level of service is so much better than Amazon or Walmart. You contact them with any problem, they help you immediately. So for them, it's business. It's very effective business. So with that, I'm going to walk you through an attack that I worked and kind of give you an idea of what this looked like. This attack is from 5 years ago, but it's the best example I've got. It happened where I used to work, and they got attacked over Memorial Day weekend. What we know about ransomware attackers is they want to target 3-day weekends. I'm always terrified on 3-day weekends because I know I'll get called into work. They look on the calendar because they know that'll give them a little bit more time, gives them an extra day to do what they're doing. That's why they pick those 3-day weekends. So this is a police department under attack. On that Saturday of Memorial Day weekend, they noticed email was down. All the files ended in lockbit, so .lockbit extension. They couldn't open anything. They couldn't print anything. Thankfully, 911 and the radio still worked, but everything else pretty much was locked up. So I get a phone call from the IT director. I'm at home and I was making fajitas when this happened. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to eat my fajitas and get to the PD and do this. So the first thing we needed to do was stop the bleeding. And so I had every police officer in town respond to the police department, and I instructed them to pull Ethernet cables. You never want to turn off the computers. And the reason you don't want to turn them off is that sometimes in the RAM on the machine, we can recover encryption keys. But unplugging them from the network, that just keeps things from spreading. You know, patient zero type of thing. You don't want to spread the disease around your infrastructure. The ransom note was found in every single directory across the infrastructure, hundreds of endpoints. At the time, we didn't know how they got in until later. So we went into the server room, and there was this splash screen right on the domain controller. Domain controller is like tip top. You get that, you pretty much control the entire kingdom. And so it says right on the splash screen, here's where you need to go. Go to this link, start communicating with us. So a little bit about Lockbit. This is the most profitable ransomware in history. It's being done out of the Eastern Bloc countries. What's interesting about ransomware from Russia is that in Russia, it is illegal to be a hacker, but they only enforce it if you attack other Russians. So within ransomware, they write the code to look to see what alphabet you're using. If you use the Cyrillic alphabet on your computer, it will not deploy. They do that to keep Russian law enforcement from kicking down their door. So it's kind of a neat thing that they do. I found that I've tested it where I got this ransomware. I'm going to change my keyboard to Cyrillic and it will not deploy. So typically Lockbit is going after larger organizations. It is ransomware for service. So the initial response was first, and this is something to keep in mind if it happens to you, and the truth of the matter is that every year, 1/3 of all businesses come under some sort of cyber attack. So this is a good methodology to follow. First step really needs to be, if you've got an attorney, get them in a room and have them start working with your insurance company. If you have cyber insurance, that's awesome because they will have a playbook for you to follow. So we engaged with our cyber insurance. They immediately brought in legal advisors for ransomware. That's important because there are federal and state laws that require you to file reports. They hired a forensics team. Now, I'm a forensics guy, but for something this scope, Neil Uhrig, can't do it himself. I needed more. I needed more help. And they also hired a negotiator. So what they actually do is they have people that will actually negotiate on the website for us to get the price down, to get it to an area where you feel comfortable paying the fee. For us, we worked with the U.S. Secret Service to handle the investigation. Part of the reason is that at that time, I was a task force officer with the Secret Service. I had their resources. And the FBI, well, they wanted to help. Their closest resource was in Salt Lake. So that's the law enforcement arm we went with, was with the U.S. Secret Service. Under federal law, there are 2 federal agencies that can do this work, FBI and the Secret Service. So take your pick. It just depends on where you're at and who you want to work with. So as we did our work, we figured out how they got in. They used a VPN that was set up. A VPN is a virtual private network. It's an encrypted way to tunnel into your network from a remote location. The FortiGate VPN that was used was very rarely used by our staff. It was actually set up for our IT personnel to remote into our computer system from their cell phones off duty. That was really set up because if an officer locks themselves out of their Windows account, they can just jump on their phone, reset the password, and go on. But because they don't use it very often, no one noticed what was happening. We were dealing with a situation involving weak passwords. The password was password one, not making that up. And they got into our system. How long were they in there? We know at a minimum 3 hours and 48 minutes. I say a minimum because logs don't go back that far. And typically in a ransomware, they're in your infrastructure much longer doing reconnaissance and setting up the attack. But we know for sure 3 hours and 48 minutes in the system. And then they're also obfuscating their IP addresses. You see here, it looks like they're in Germany, Bulgaria, Luxembourg, Netherlands. They just bounce around these different IP addresses, so it's harder for us to find them. So when they got in, they first got into the domain controller. They got all of everyone's passwords. There's a file that has a copy of the password hashes. A hash is a way of obfuscating a password, and they can, depending on their equipment, they can crack it. They then used remote desktop to get into other systems. They disabled virus protection. They then deployed ransomware in the temp folder. That is pretty common in attacks. They will launch it from temp because a lot of virus protection is told, hey, if it runs from the temp directory, let it run. It's a vulnerability, but some organizations do that. So often by default, they will deploy the ransomware from the Windows temp folder. From there, they hit 14 servers and ran a bunch of commands to delete shadow copies. So if you had a backup on your computer, boom, they deleted it. They then set up the registry to rerun the ransomware every time there's a reboot. So recovery took us about a year. We deployed two-factor authentication at that point, put new rules for passwords in place, so more complex passwords. We spent a number of months before we even turned on the internet, and we did everything through Gmail for a period of time. The only internet access in the police department that was not affected was my office. I like to brag to them about that. Like, my stuff was secure. The rest of the PD wasn't. So I brag about that. It made me feel good. So this chart gives you kind of an idea of what you can do to prevent these attacks, because the attacks are linear. There's step by step that have to happen. Typically, they're trying to harvest credentials. That is going to happen through an email. So you need to inspect your email system. Put software on your servers to inspect inbound email. Number two is user actions. The user typically has to do something, whether click a link, click a program. So you need to have endpoint protection on these systems watching for that. Can't just trust your staff to know better because we're all human. We make mistakes. So leverage technology to help them avoid it. Account compromise. So if they get to this point, they've got your password. How do you stop it? You deploy two-factor authentication. That works on the theory that it's something you know, being a password, and something you have, whether it be a code from your phone or some sort of YubiKey, but there's two steps involved. That helps protect these accounts. The next step is privilege escalation. They need to be able to get as high as they can get within your domain so they can do the most damage. You need to have systems deployed on your network that watch for privilege escalation. You should automatically, if you get someone's trying to upgrade their access, you should be getting a notification either by email or something from your software saying, hey, this is going on right now. Take a look at this. So that needs to be deployed. The next thing is lateral movement. So if they happen to get, root access to everything, they've got to get across the network, right? So they got to do lateral movement. To protect against that, segregate your network. Have smaller networks that do interconnect, but they're firewalled. So that way, if you lose some of your systems, they don't get everything. So you segregate the system and then you segregate access through a zero trust method. And what that means is that every person needs to justify why they're accessing certain areas. It's not because we don't trust our staff. It's not that. We trust our staff to look at, they need to see what they need to see. But we know that if we open it up to everything, a hacker can get everything. So, zero trust model. If they need access, they need to ask for it. And then finally, if you get encrypted, what's the remedy? Backups that have been tested, validated. That's how you do it. So these steps, those are kind of your 6 steps towards disaster. And the bottom there tells you how to avoid it. And one last thing before we start going into questions, I want to touch on passwords because this is a pet peeve of mine, and we're doing it wrong in America. We want passwords that have letters, numbers, symbols, and all this stuff. And it looks really hard. It's really hard for humans to remember. Computers don't care about how confusing the password is. They care about what's called entropy. It's the randomness of data. And so the more characters involved, the harder it is for a computer to crack it. So that password we see in the upper left would take 3 days for a computer to crack. It's very easy. But let's say we move away from this confusion and use pass phrases. So you'll see correct, horse, battery, staple. No weird symbols, no numbers as letters, none of that. Very easy for a human to remember, but because of the level of entropy, it would take 555 years to crack that password. So we're doing it wrong. We're telling everyone you got to have these complex passwords. We need to move to a system where it's passphrases. The way I personally do it, I use funny movie quotes like Tropic Thunder, one of my favorite movies. And so I'll pick something out of there that cracks me up that I will remember. That becomes my password. I'll remember it, but no computer's ever going to figure it out. So that is the end of my presentation section. We'll go and move into some questions here. Go ahead and grab this, my business card. I'll leave this up for a minute or two, and then I'll turn my camera on, but I'll have Kelly start with some questions.
Yeah, boy, and I just want to say this has been so eye-opening and fascinating and a little bit terrifying. We do
It,
have a handful of questions that came in from the audience, and also some of them tied to some of the or related to some of the things that I had in mind too. But before I jump into that, I do want to say our point here isn't to scare the hell out of the people in attendance, but to give you information that empowers you to be a little bit more secure. And I said there would be no pitches, but I will say one thing. One thing that our clients have known and realized from EXP over the course of the last year is that we've kind of leveled up our cybersecurity recommendations that we've offered to our clients. And it's because of all of the things that you're mentioning here, Neil. It's there's a level of sophistication and complexity in these attacks, and that's the reason why now we're recommending, you know, Microsoft Business Premium that has security controls in it that the standard version doesn't, and Avanan or other filtering software for inbound emails, and endpoint detection and response, and managed detection and response. And I realize our clients might get subscription fatigue. But the point is not that we're trying to sell you more products. It is that we're trying to implement all of these layers that protect your organization to a greater extent. Now, I do want to get to questions. Forgive me for that little pitch for cybersecurity. One of the questions, so one thing that the first question that came in was related to skimming, and I want to open it up to a broader section or broader topic, but the question was, are there obvious signs the skimmer has been installed? But the broader topic is, are there obvious signs that organizations miss? Are there things that they're missing that you see again and again?
Yeah. So with skimmers, they have to sit higher because they have to have the PIN numbers to capture that PIN code. So it's going to sit higher. So there's a trick though that we can do, and it involves just a blank hotel key. I'm just going to pull out, let's see, a card that I don't want to get stolen. Okay, I'll use this right here. I'll use my Costco card. What I do is I'll take an old hotel key, put it into my terminal, and I'm going, and this would be into the area where you insert for chip, and I draw a Sharpie line where it touches, like where it lines up with the POS system. And then every day come in and put that in there. And if you can't see the line anymore, something has been placed on it. That's the easiest way to do it. There is a tool called an easy sweep. Those are available online, or you can actually get there's a 3D printing model where you can get that. I can send that. If anybody wants the 3D printing model for it, I can email it and can make your own. And that also does very similar. It inserts through the card slot. It has little fingers that go over the top to show that it's the right height or not. So that's how you look for it.
Got it. And so on a broader level, though, most of the people in attendance are not selling retail products and having, they don't have most of the people in attendance do not, some do. But are there other gaps that you commonly see? I mean, you've addressed some of them, but can you speak to that a little bit? What things are businesses consistently missing? Where are they falling down again and again?
So the big one for me on skimming issues is they're not training their staff. That's
Hmm.
typically what it is. When I find skimmers, the staff has no idea, and I show them they didn't know. That is where it comes from. It's a culture, comes down from corporate. So, like businesses like Walmart, I don't get a lot of skimmers out of Walmart because Walmart has a methodology. They teach their staff. They have checklists. So it's all about having this culture of awareness, and we
Hmm.
see that with businesses. They just don't talk about it.
So security awareness training, which is a topic near
Exactly.
and dear to my heart,
Yep.
is important. It sounds like you're saying. So I'm going to shift gears because two people asked the same question. It relates to like 2 seconds of your talk, but two people picked up on it. That was your advice about LinkedIn profiles. Can you elaborate on what you
Yeah.
meant there? You said don't have a LinkedIn profile.
The issue with LinkedIn is if you are in a position where you have access to organizational funds, um, let's say you're the bookkeeper or comptroller or what have you, you can use LinkedIn to figure out who works in a business. And so this is a way for them to do reconnaissance. In fact, in law enforcement, I do this all the time. If I want to find my bad guy, they're going to have something online. And whether that's LinkedIn, and I've had them have LinkedIn profiles. And so there is, I get it, like you want to have your LinkedIn profile, but if you're in a position where if you were to become compromised, they are able to get control of your computer, what type of damage could be done because of your access. And so for me in my job, we have very high security standards. We have to all have top secret clearances and stuff. So I got rid of my LinkedIn profile because I don't want to be targeted for, whatever they try to go after me for. So that's the issue with LinkedIn. It's
Mhm.
I get that it's, social media, you want to have that, but um, there's a risk with that. So if you do it though, you're going to have to really be on guard then because they could use that to research who about your business. That's all that comes
Right,
with that. And
right.
that's across the board though with anything. If you're
It,
posting like your company, if you have a about us page that lists all of your finance people on there, that's also dangerous because now they know who to email to do a business email compromise.
Right, right. Makes sense. And, speaking to the LinkedIn issue, it's not just executives. We did a training video a while back that this was about a year ago, year and a half ago, there was a widespread new hire LinkedIn scam where they would send texts to new employees, and new employees want to please their boss. So they're getting an email from the boss saying, go buy a bunch of gift cards or do other things that
Yeah.
might lead to scams. And the new employees weren't savvy enough because they weren't steeped in the culture. They didn't recognize that this was probably a scam. I know we're on the verge of running over, but there are so many good questions. I want to hit just a couple before we close
Mhm.
up here. One
You
was
bet.
about at what level do these attacks hit? Does ransomware, is it more likely to hit Fortune 500 companies? Is it unlikely to hit very small businesses, sole proprietors, five-person companies? Can you speak to that at all?
I can. Obviously, if they can hit a major business, they're going to do it. Like that was the Colonial Pipeline attack,
Right.
but it's really hard for these hackers to get in there because there's such robust security with those type of businesses. What I have found is this: smaller businesses don't get hit as much because they don't have as many assets. They don't have the money. Large businesses are harder to hit because they're security conscious. So it's really these middle ground businesses that have a decent cash flow, but they don't have the infrastructure to protect themselves. That's where we're seeing a lot of it because they're very vulnerable. They have money, but not enough to protect themselves. So it's this middle ground type of business. And so, yeah, it's sad because the people that are getting attacked, a lot of those businesses don't survive after an attack.
Right. Yeah, which speaks to the importance of backups. And you said it gave me a goosebump when you said the word testing.
Yeah.
Test your backups, do a test restore regularly. It's something we advise for all of our clients, but can't tell you how many times I've met with a business leader who we don't work with. And I ask them, you back up your data, right? They say, yeah. You monitor that? Yeah, we do. When's the last time you did a test restore? And their face goes blank. I can't overstress the need to test your backups regularly. We are over time, so I think we're going to have to uh, call this due to time. Boy, we might want to have you back for just an Ask Me Anything session if you're open
Yeah.
to it. I
Always,
found
yeah.
this to be so important and so valuable. And I will actually, there's one other question somebody
Yeah.
asked about also about training and where can we get password tips. There's two solutions I can give you. One is that this presentation is being recorded. You can rewind it and share it, and we'll chop it up into digestible bits and post those as well. But also, EXP Technical has created security awareness training that we give away to everyone. It includes a chapter on password policies. It actually includes a link to the cartoon that you shared there as well. So there's so we're following the same path here and making some very similar recommendations. We're over time, so I think we have to call it to respect everybody's time here. But Neil, thank you so much for joining us today. I found this so informative, and I believe our audience did as well. To everyone in attendance, thank you for attending, and again, thank you again, Neil. I don't know if you have any last words to say before we log off here.
I do. I just want to, on the testing issue, one thing that I do recommend to businesses, this is a fun group team building exercise. Run a tabletop with your staff on how you would handle an attack. Get together in the morning, have some breakfast out, and then somebody launch a scenario. Hey, we just got hit with ransomware. And then you guys walk through it together because through practice, you get that muscle memory. If it happens, you're going to know exactly what to do. And that's something we took from law enforcement. When I was a cop, we constantly did the what if. What if this person pulls a gun on me on this traffic stop? What am I going to do? Okay, I'm going to move to the right, get behind my car, whatever. You could do the same thing in your business. Plan it, practice it. So when it happens, because you honestly, there will be people on here that are going to get hit. Guaranteed in the next year, you're going to get attacked. This
Mhm.
will help you prepare for it.
Awesome. We'll end with that. Thank you again, Neil. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for everyone for attending.